Crystal, this is not a drill.
Seek shelter. This is not a drill. Seek shelter now. Where would you run if this were announced? What would make you feel safe? Who makes you feel safe? And what do you do when you leave a safe shelter? Contest master, fellow Toastmasters, I was born to a teenage mother and father, fresh out of prison. I spent my first nights home in a dresser drawer. And by the time I was 5 years old, I regularly watched as evil worked through the hands of the man whom my lips should have called father, painted my mother purple and blue. After years of his painting, I was awoken in the middle of the night and told to slide warm pants on under my rainbow bright nightgown. I was carried to a 1972 olive green Nova that drove us all to a shelter. A 3-story Victorian home where every kid only had a mama to dry their tears and shush them in the halls. This was my first lesson that shelter can always be found in a storm. After a year of living in the shelter and lots of counseling, we returned home. I was happy to be home, not within the walls of the Victorian house in the city, where the rules seemed to stifle all that was aching to emerge from my 8-year-old heart. My brother and I were finally able to play outside again, but that didn't mean that I was laying my head on my pillow at night dreaming of cotton candy twisters. No, home was a place where happy memories were made, but sometimes stalking eyes were watching while they were created. So many nights I was awoken to sounds of knocking on my bedroom window, only to hear the raspy voice of my father asking me to let him in. Countless nights, my tears left a breadcrumb trail from my room to my mother's bedside. It was the only place I knew to run. Sometimes he would force his way into the house, find my mother, and be sure to leave his punishing marks on her face and body. My little eyes burned as he sat on top of her, swinging and saying that I needed to understand that it was her fault for being bad. I learned quickly that if he came, the only safe place was the bathroom because it had no windows. I would run to find my little brother, and together we would sit between the wall and the toilet, my tiny hands holding a knife and praying that he would not come through the door. I was old enough to understand the danger, but I was far too young to know it took more than my paltry hands could hold to provide shelter. I was arming myself with what I thought would give me strength. As I aged, he followed me to work or learned my school schedule and was sure to drive past the window of my classrooms just so I would be aware that he could find me and he knew where I was. So many lessons, teaching me that the only shelter strong enough to protect me was found within my heart and my faith alone. I eventually learned that I could enlist in the U.S. Air Force to pursue my dream of working with foreign languages, and I became a Chinese linguist. While in California, studying at the Defense Language Institute, my body began to betray me, losing consciousness 5 to 8 times a week, falling, getting concussions, and having no one to catch me, struggling to balance my military requirements and my language studies with a body that was failing me. I wouldn't obtain an accurate diagnosis for 21 years. Desperately alone, despite my faith, I sought love like most do with my story. At 19 years old, I was told I would become a mother to twins. 4 weeks later, I was now more than a U.S. airman. I was a wife. But 5 months after that first ultrasound, there was only one heartbeat. Following a car accident and an announcement of a code blue, we were now a precious family of 3 in a little hospital in Salinas, California. I was medically discharged from the Air Force, and my husband's orders eventually brought us to Augusta, Georgia, where we would grow roots, babies, and a whole lot of faith. My babies are grown now, 17 and 19 years old, and they're free of the chains that bound my heart and my life all those years ago. My 2 small hands that once held a knife and quivered in fear now hold them up and finally understand that it's my choice to allow my story to be the nails and boards that are used to build their shelter. It is our commission to be within the world's hurting and lost, to share the hope we have that allows us to boldly step out of our shelters, knowing that we have confidently navigated the storm. As I work each day within the walls of the Children's Hospital as a family support coordinator, I meet many that society deems unworthy. But all I can do is pray that they see me as a shelter amidst their storm. I work to provide not just comfort, but acceptance and love as I support families. Whether it's helping a father who has just watched his daughter take her last breath, or a mother who wasn't equipped to be a safe place and is losing her children. Every day I communicate with hurting people by sharing my story, but most importantly, by listening to theirs. Because among the pages of their story is the strength they need, not just to seek shelter, but to provide shelter. So the next time your situation yells out, seek shelter, don't think of a place to hide until it's safe. Think of a place deep within your soul that you will arm yourself with whatever you have to make you strong. And realize that when you emerge, you will have a story that will be the hammer and the saw that someone else needs for their own shelter. Thank you.